won't mind the phantom. He finds you.
G'day, this is X-Band, the Phantom Podcast. Our website is chroniclechamber.com and you can subscribe to our podcast via YouTube or through your favourite podcast app. Today we are doing something different. I am Jermaine Parker and today you won't be hearing from me and all the team, but instead a collection of fans, creators and publishers as they tell us what is their favourite story and or issue. You may have noticed a bit of a theme lately, and that is all because of the fandom census we are currently promoting, which can be found at our website. We are collecting data to give it to the owners of the Phantom, creators and publishers on what we all like in our Phantom stories. If you would like to participate and submit a video of your favourite Phantom story and or comic, please contact us at chroniclechamber@gmail.com. We will be hearing from a number of fans, creators and publishers from around the world in different countries, different hemispheres, and so it will be a great collection of fans. To start off with, we will be hearing from Velluto.
Hello Phantom friends, Velluto here, coming to you from my studio in the deep woods of Utah, USA. I'd like to spend a few minutes with you today talking to you about perhaps my favorite Phantom story that I have illustrated during my career with the Phantom, which started in 2007 with me working for Egmont and the great editor Ulf Granberg. This story that I'm going to talk to you about came in at the end of 2013 and started to be published in 2014. And it was published by Hermes Press here in the United States and comprised six. It was a mini-series of 6 issues, and later was published in a trade paperback, this one, and is called Danger in the Forbidden City. Now, this story has a story because it started at a time and it ended at a time when all the people involved, from the publisher to yours truly to the writer, had been going through some serious health problems. And so it was a struggle in our lives. At the same time, that struggle turned into motivation to producing this this volume, this story. What does it have that makes it my favorite? Well, first of all, in this case, for this series, I had the privilege and the honor to not just do the illustrations, pencils and inks, but also I had the responsibility of doing the art direction for the colors that were done by my longtime collaborator Eugenio Mattozzi. I had a say also in the lettering and many other aspects of the making of this book. There were a lot of expectations for this book, and it was supposed to. It was presented at the 2014 San Diego Comic-Con, and we were hoping, the publisher, myself, to have it advertised, in a quite solid manner. And for that purpose, I spent a lot of time creating this cover, which you can see also in the back on the wall. And and the purpose of this cover was to present the world of the Phantom all in one illustration. So I had a lot of fun, doing this this illustration and exploring the world of the Phantom and presenting it almost as if it were a movie poster. I also had the pleasure of creating the logo for this series and so many other things. This, however, ended up taking a little more time than we were expecting. Nonetheless, the final product probably, with all humility, it's probably one of the best, if not the best, Phantom graphic novel ever produced. I had fun creating the beginning sequence for those who came in late, traditional for all Phantom stories. But in my case, I used a narrative form found in ancient scriptures, actually, called chiasmus, which means that a story, a paragraph, something ends the same way it began. And this story begins with the fire. Actually, there's all the four elements of nature: fire, air, water, and earth. And it begins in fire and it ends in fire with, let's see, with the fire of the swearing of the oath of the Phantom, and the fire next to his skull throne. There were so many other elements that we used in the story that gave me the enthusiasm to work on it, because we were trying to do the most faithful interpretation of the 1936 story. That was the very first story that was published of the Phantom. So all of the elements, starting from the typewriters and the anything that you see is 1936. Even the home in the jungle that the Phantom discover is done in the Frank Lloyd Wright architecture style. So it's an homage to that area, and basically, try to capture the feeling of the early stories that generations of Phantom fans and readers are attached to, because they feel they remember their youth, when they first read it. And so one of our objective was to try to bring that feeling back to the old readers and new readers, and for the old readers to feel like they felt when they were young. One interesting thing is that Peter David, who wrote the story and presented it to the publisher many years before, had the intention of doing Phantom meets Tarzan story, which for a series of reasons, perhaps most important being the cost to license from the Edgar Rice Burroughs company the right to publish Tarzan. That dream could not be done, so it opened the opportunity to present a Tarzan-like character, which we made a reference. We made this character to be Jimmy Wells, which in the very first stories was supposed to be the alter ego of the Phantom. So the confrontation, between the Phantom and his alter ego, basically, it's very interesting. Plus, it brings that, Edgar Rice Burroughs feelings. Here's a nice illustration because Jimmy Wells was Diana's boyfriend, and here's that illustration that shows what's going on here, even for the readers. So there's so many things in this book, and if you haven't seen it, this was really a work of love from all the people involved, and no one excluded, and it's still available, and you can also find an interesting thing in the back. We have all alternate covers. We have sketches, preparatory sketches, evolution of a cover. So I like it because it presents. It even has an example of the script. I like it because it presents the creative process, and that we as artists and writers and we go through, and it's an effort, and a good product require a lot of effort. It's necessary. Plus, there's a interesting interview with this guy, which is me. It's a fictional interview. Actually, you have to read it to understand what I'm talking about. But it talks about the Phantom and me. So, thank you very much for spending this time with me, and I wish you all well.
Hi, Phantom fans. My name is Scott. I am the USA reviewer for ChronicleChamber.com, and I first discovered the Phantom as a little guy when the Billy Zane movie came out in the mid-90s. So for favorite storylines, there are two I wanted to highlight here. The first one, I want to go with the original, the Singh Brotherhood storyline from 1936. Of course, it's kind of a cliche pick. It's the first one, but it gave us the Phantom's whole world. It gave us the moniker The Ghost Who Walks, his skull mark with the indelible ink. We see a Phantom who is very much of his time in terms of pulp heroes and adventurers, traveling the world. There's nonstop action. There's deadly traps. There's enemies, both human and non-human. There's secret underwater bases. It goes on and on and on. The beasts just don't stop. And Phantom is cunning, he's mysterious, he's a little bit funny too. And the other thing I wanted to highlight is Diana Palmer. I like her characterization here because it's a pre-code depiction of women. Now when I say that, I mean American cinema, pre-code era. If you look at films that predated the code, women did have stronger roles in cinema. They could be adventurers, they could be, action characters, they could stand toe-to-toe with the men in the films. And so we see that translated across different spectrum of entertainment, and it makes its way in this initial story as well. So that is kind of cool. And, of course, I am a sucker for this, nostalgic vintage vibe that's in that initial storyline. It's, kind of storytelling we don't see much of anymore. Things are in some ways a little more complicated, but I do also want to note that the art is fantastic in the Singh Brotherhood. There are things that we wouldn't see today because of the times, of course, but the way it's drawn, the way the Phantom is shaded, it's beautiful. The other storyline I did want to hit on real quick because this is the one that really sealed the deal on the Phantom for me as a kid growing up. It is the two-parter Curse of the Phantom storyline from Moonstone. This, to me, is not just an excellent story that features the Phantom. It is probably one of my favorite comic book storylines of all time. And I am a big comic nerd. I read a lot of comics from the big two and from indie publishers. The art is gorgeous. You have the tension, you have the heart, you have this ancient enemy that the Phantom is unaware of that now, has this familial relationship in a way. Kind of their destinies are intertwined. That's probably a better way to say that. It is just a fantastic story. I don't want to spoil it, but it is everything I look for in a good, solid comic book hero storyline. Those are my picks, and I hope you enjoy those stories as much as I do. Thanks.
Hi, Eoin McAuley from Dublin here behind Lightning Strike Comics, and we've printed 1 or 2 Phantom comics and reprinted a dozen or so more over here. My first Phantom story would have probably been the Billy Zane film and the animated series Phantom 2040. But my personal favourite that really led me to become endeared with the character would have been the Avon novels. Particularly the very first one, which told the origin of the Phantom, which is more or less a retelling from the newspaper strips as well, which is the childhood of the Phantom. But the Avon one is the story of the Phantom, and there's also the novel as well, The Son of the Phantom, which predates the Avon novels. The Son of the Phantom, similar enough to the story of the Phantom, but the story of the Phantom, obviously having come much later, has more material to add to the mythology as well. I'm lucky to have both in my collection here, particularly The Son of the Phantom, which is a well-worn copy but proudly displays onto the shelf. And we've always kept, whenever I've worked on a Phantom story, I've always kept that particular story in mind. I treat that as scripture because it comes directly from Falk, and it also is so reflective of the original McCoy and Falk strip as well, which led us into the childhood of the Phantom. So that would probably be among my top story, and I think it's a really good jumping on point, not just for new readers but also for young readers, featuring the Phantom, who at the start of the story is himself a child. It's a perfect onboarding point for new readers as well. So that would be my main story. So in terms of the strip, childhood of the Phantom. In terms of overall story, it would be the story / Son of the Phantom. And in terms of first introduction to the character, it would actually be outside the strips. It would be the Billy Zane film and Phantom 2040. And that just speaks to, again, I'm based in Dublin, so that speaks to how the character reached me, and just speaks to the legacy as well. So best of luck, guys, and thanks for letting me share my favourite story.
Hey, Phantom folks. The guys at Chronicle Chambers asked me if I could make a little video on my favorite Phantom story, or that one story that just did it for me, And I thought about it. I got a bunch of favorites, and I got some that I like, but the one that really moved me and did something for me it's got to be probably the first one that my grandmother read to me, 1971's Defense. I mean, the story, it has this guy kidnapping people and whatnot, and, it's got these ghosts being projected. It was the coolest thing, Falk said that the whole projecting thing, he loosely based it on the Wizard of Oz, the wizard projecting, all that crap. And my grandmother would read me the story. I mean, I was too small to read. And she would take, we would cut out the strip, and she would just, show me the strip. I would draw it. And then she would just make a little story out of it. Every day there was a different story. When the actual strip was completed, it was, what I heard was 1,000 times better than what Falk wrote down. I do remember these sharks that was so terrifying. The Phantom was in the water, and there was a shark fin. Actually, one of the questions for Lee Falk was, where did the shark idea come from? Did you get it from Jaws? And he said, yes, absolutely. Which found out was a bunch of BS. Jaws, the book, was released in early 1974. So, and I asked Cy about the story. He gave me a whole different insight into it. I mean, it's just awesome. You know, you get to talk to the people that made that magic for you, you know? And it was wild. And I was really lucky to get my hands on the originals. And they're a little sad to look at today because my grandma's not here anymore, but the magic that started it. I've got a couple here. These are from the Phans. And this is the one that traumatized me and messed me up. I remember this scene. These two right here were just the craziest thing. You know, oh man, if I could go back in time. But to me, that story was it. It was magic. And it's the comic strip. I get Phantom comics sent to me literally every month from around the world. And there's nothing like the comic strip. It's the magic. It was started by Falk. And to me, I try. I'm in touch with artists from around the world, but there's nothing like the strip. And yeah, that would be it. Defense by Lee Falk and my pal, Mr. Seymour. I never call him Side to his face. It's always Seymour. And he laughs. Barry. Thank you, guys.
Hi everyone, Glaucio Cardoso here. Germain asked me to talk about my favorite Phantom story. Well, you know, there are many stories of his that I really enjoy, but if I have to talk about a favorite, I would certainly be the miniseries published by DC Comics in the 80s. Peter David created an incredible adventure in which the Phantom shows himself to be a true force of nature. We have everything that is best in this story that was wonderfully illustrated by Joe Orlando. Whenever I need to recommend a Phantom story to someone who has never read him, this is the adventure I recommend. Thank you for the invitation, Germain, and greetings from Brazil to everyone.
Greetings from Argentina, friend of Chronic Chamber. I'm Juan Moreno Roselot, son of the Phantom artist Cesar Espadari. The topic that brings us together today is to talk about which is our favorite saga or episode of The Gods Who Walk. It's really difficult to choose just one, since so many good episodes and sagas and so many talented artists have collaborated and continue to do so today around the world. I must say that my introduction to the Phantom world was through Cesar, which is why I first met the artists of the so-called Team Phantom. But in recent years, I've been lucky enough to call some few artists my friends. Here I want to highlight the gentleman Antonio Lemos, who I met personally last year during a visit to Uruguay. Also, besides admiring Antonio's work, I am a fan of Paul Mason and his Vietnam saga. Well, I must say I choose The Death of the Phantom from 2004, this episode of the Pirate Queen saga with a script by David Bishop and art by Cesar Espadari particularly caught my attention, as Phantom fight with the same pirate alongside Kate and reunite with his son Chris, a pirate like his mother at that time. I want to highlight the final pages, 7 in total, where the atmosphere achieved by Spadari is impressive and moving. Personally, the dialogue where Phantom says, and I quote, "I'm proud to be your father, and I'm proud to call you my son," is a moment full of everything that a story, whether a comic or not, should have to achieve a sublime moment. Well, I hope you enjoyed it too, and greetings to Chronic Chambers, friends, and Phantom fans around the world.
Make a video about my favorite Phantom story. It's harder than it seems. I think I've bitten off more than I can chew. Originally, I always used to think that the Beanstalk was my favourite Phantom story, and I've actually made a video about this before. And while it is a comic which I absolutely love, when I think about the reason that I chose it, I think perhaps I was biased a bit by nostalgia, because it is actually one of the first Phantoms that I ever bought. What I liked about it was the fact that the Phantom barely makes an appearance in the story at all. Main character throughout the whole story, and the Phantom appears later on. And it's a terrific story about him helping out someone that really needs help, an innocent person, which I guess is something which I really admired about it. And I guess the Phantom is a story, is a comic about a guy who helps other people. So it's, I want to say it stays high up on my list, even though it might not be the best one I've ever read. The Singh Brotherhood, well, of course, this would be on the list. Of fantastic story. Those of you who are familiar with my work, you'll know I've mined this story quite a bit for inspiration. Some of the stories which I've written are based on the events. I've filled in some of the gaps in this story. And I have another story coming out soon called Man Who Cannot Die. And that is a bit of a retelling of this story. What I like about those early folk stories is the way the Singh Brotherhood and the Sky Band are basically, I consider them like the same story. One just flows into the next. And the same could be said about all the stories in this one. So Little Toma, The Prisoner of the Himalayas, and Adventure in Algiers. I'm not even sure how to pronounce that. But these early folk more stories, these came out when I was very young, when I was first becoming interested in reading comics. So these hold a really, high value for me. The Shark's Nest, another absolute classic story. The Slave Traders, I think this might be where Moore finds his peak as an artist. Absolutely stunning artworks. And the story that Falk wrote, it's very clever, very funny, very witty, excellent. The Mysterious Girl. See, you're probably seeing a bit of a pattern. Like a lot of these are very, very old stories, Falk more. Another one I spoke about on a different video was this story. Now this might be one that some of you may have read and not thought all that much of, but I go back to this story quite a lot. It's probably one of the comics in my collection which I've read multiple times. And what's so good about it? Well, it's not a folk story, but I feel like it follows the same kind of beats. If you have this, dig it out and read over it. Fishes of Pearls, that's another classic. Of course, this contains the Sky Band. Another non-folk story is The Test, which is another fantastic story. This is one I think that inspired me a fair bit with Enter the Phantom. I might not have even been conscious of that at the time, but this is another story about Kit, young Kit, or I should say the 21st Phantom, before becoming the Phantom, doing a test that his father and all his forefathers have done. I thought that's a really excellent story. Then, of course, there's the childhood of the Phantom, and a lot of the stories by Wilson McCoy, or illustrated by Wilson McCoy, that when I was younger, I didn't like his style very much, but when I read them now, like Princess Valerie, actually, Princess Valerie might have been more, but going back to McCoy, a lot of McCoy's artwork now, I'm finding much more stylized and interesting. I used to kind of feel it was too cartoony, but now I realised that the Phantom is a cartoon, so what was I talking about? But what is my favourite? I would have to say, based on our discussion, that I'm still finding the Singh Brotherhood to be an immensely enjoyable story, and it's so clever. And it introduced so much of the essential Phantom lore in the first story. But I always go back to the Beanstalk. If there's stories that I read and reread and reread, it's these ones, the ones I've talked about, including the raid in San Loy, another word I'm not even sure how to pronounce. You know, when you read them, you're not reading them out loud, so it doesn't matter how you pronounce them in your own head. But yeah, I suppose, in no particular order, Singh Brotherhood and all those other early Moore stories, Raid in San Loy, and a sentimental favourite, The Beanstalk. These works have really inspired my own work. Day at the Races, Dinah and the Heartbreakers Gang, and the other works that I've done. Well, I hope you enjoyed this. See ya.
Hello, my name is Pirate Dave. I'm here to answer the call from Chronicle Chamber for fans of the Phantom to share some of their favorite stories for the characters. My initiation into the character, of course, comes in 1996. I was a big fan of the Billy Zane film. My mom had also bought me the Phantom 2040 for the SNES, so I kind of got introduced to the character through some maybe unconventional projects, and then eventually explored the more conventional newspaper dailies and Sundays, of which I've read about 100 newspaper dailies and about 100 Sundays. But I wanted to share some more modern stories for the characters. Of course, we are talking about 2 decades removed by this point. As you can see, this is Moonstone's first Phantom series, issue number 7 and issue number 8, both written by Ben Robb. These feature the story titled The Aviatrix, which may be obvious from the story name, is a reference to the Sky Band, the classic female sky pirates introduced in the second daily story, and then of course seen in the Billy Zane film. Written by Ben Rabb, penciled by Pat Quinn, inked by Pat Quinn, Ken Wheaton, and colored by Joe Bucco. Give credit where it's due. The art and the coloring especially is one of the things that I really love about these 2 issues. The story features a billionaire, Mr. Gaines, head of a tech company, en route to an international destination where he is waylaid, as you can see, by excellently designed sky pirates. Look at that. Wonderful art. The thing I like most about this story is that it features, that classic sort of take with the Sky Band, but it iterates upon it pretty interestingly. Unlike with the Sky Band, where we kind of only got insight into Sala, and then the leader of the Sky Band, I believe she might have been called Baroness, and you can see him actually featured in here. We actually get insight into almost the whole roster of these new Sky Band pirates. So there's a lot of personality that gets explored in this one, and I think that's just an excellent way to iterate when you're using elements from a classic story. The covers, of course, I want to mention that too. Doug Klauba, who made many of the very beautiful covers for the Moonstone series. I like these especially because they're unique to the story. I felt that a lot of Klauba's covers for Moonstone sometimes were just excellent Phantom drawings that had nothing to do with story. If you only read 2 Moonstone issues ever, maybe check these ones out, especially as a classic fan. It'll make reference to some of the elements that you may already be aware of from the Sky Band. I don't want to go into issue number 8 too much, because if you have not read these, there's a little bit more of interesting revelations, a little interesting developments to explore. Thank you again to Chronicle Chamber. I hope that you have a lot of great responses from really great fans of the character. He's a guy that I've stuck with for the last 30 years almost here, and hopefully here's to another 30 more, and 2025 being the resurgence of the Phantom in the U.S., where we've kind of had a drought of comic series for him. Thanks again. Have a good day.
Thank you for listening and or watching us. Our website is chroniclechamber.com. We would love to hear your thoughts, feedback and opinions on our social media platforms or over at the YouTube channel. You can subscribe to us via YouTube or through your favourite podcast apps including iTunes or Spotify. Thank you, please get in contact with us, and as always, happy Phantom.
Man cannot die. The Phantom. The ghost who walks. The Phantom. Enemies beware. The Phantom's always there, but you won't find the Phantom. He finds